Every semester that I teach pre-service and in-service educators on topics ranging from diversity to racial justice to literacy acquisition in urban schools, I make sure to include a unit on the art of the cipher. For those who don't know, over 80% of urban educators are not people of color and live outside of the racially diverse communities where their students reside. So I bring in the cipher, a practice within hip-hop culture with West African roots. Essentially, it's a circle of people who come together to share an extemporaneous freestyle or newly written ideas over a beat. The goal is to exhibit mastery, lyrical and rhetorical dexterity, sometimes using the African diasporic tradition of signifying. So every semester for some years now, I've taught these fundamental skills of hip-hop writing so that these educators dare participate in the art of the cipher. And every semester, I witness the same exact patterns during the lesson. In a nutshell, terror and fear. The beat is in the background. And as I watch the hesitation and anxiety in the room reach a boiling point, I lower the music to invite some truth. Honest reflection about what is being felt. Vulnerability, fear of failure, discomfort about being inauthentic. My lines suck. These are some of the feelings that are agreed upon in the room. It is at this point when I can see the anxious excitement of some and fear and shame in the eyes of others that I ask, how many of your students do you label illiterate by societal standards, while they can demonstrate mastery over this complex cognitive form that intimidates you in this cipher? How inauthentic it must feel for them to participate in a culture that regards their own as inferior. I tell this 81%. That for marginalized people, a truly diverse society is not about simply participating in dominant culture. I tell them that I am a repository of transnational conflict. Have you ever endured the duplicity of feeling like both victim and convict? Have you ever endured the shame of, in a classroom, mixing your words with your thoughts like professor? This author purports that sometimes hegemonic forces are forced to use degrees of fabrication, and I be thinking the same thing, so I don't know why they be hating. This may sound like just another case of broken English, but I'll be as broken as the records of our history, so I'll be that broken record. I'll be that broken record. Can you see my lines? I tell them that the process towards diversity is not just about the presence of difference. It is about creating spaces and opportunities for truly esteeming and exploring the value of difference on its own terms. You see, the problem with standard forms is not that we are incapable of acquiring them. It is that they so often fail to incorporate the genius that is available within diverse cultures. And if I am forced to be you, then I am robbed, and you are robbed of the fullest potential of me. Thank you. Today, a baffled lady observed the shell where my soul dwells and announced that I'm articulate. Which means that when it comes to enunciation and diction, I don't even think of it because I'm articulate. So when my professor asks a question and my answer is tainted with the connotation of urbanized suggestion, there's no misdirected intention. Pay attention, because I'm articulate. So when my father asks, what kind of thing is this? My articulate answer never goes amiss. I say, Father, This is the impending problem at hand, and when I'm on the block, I switch it up just because I can. So when my boy says, "What's good with you, son?" I say, "I just fall out with them people, but I done." And sometimes in class, I might pause the intellectual sound and flow to ask, "Yo, why these books never be about my peoples?" Yes, I have decided to treat all three of my languages as equal because I'm articulate. But who controls articulation? Because the English language is a multifaceted oration subject to indefinite transformation. Now you may think that it is ignorant to speak broken English, but I'm here to tell you that even articulate Americans sound foolish to the British. So when my professor comes on the block and says hello, I stop him and say, "No, you're being inarticulate. The proper way is to say what's good." Now, you may think that's too hood. That's not cool. But I'm here to tell you that even our language has rules. So when mommy mocks me and says, "Y'all be mad going to the store," I say, "Mommy, no, that sentence is not following the law. Never does the word mad go before a present participle. That's simply the principle of this English. If I had the vocal capacity, I would sing this from every mountaintop, every suburbia, and every hood. Because the only God of language is the one recorded in the Genesis of this world, saying it is good. So I may not always come before you with excellency of speech, but do not judge me by my language and assume that I'm too ignorant to teach, because I speak 3 tongues. One for each: home, school, and friends. I'm a trilingual orator. Sometimes I'm consistent with my language now and switch it up so I don't bore later. Sometimes I fight back 2 tongues while I use the other one in the classroom, and when I mistakenly mix them up, I feel crazy like I'm cooking in the bathroom. I know that I had to borrow your language because mine was stolen. But you can't expect me to speak your history wholly while mine is broken. These words are spoken by someone who is simply fed up with the Eurocentric ideals of this season. And the reason I speak a composite version of your language is because mine was raped away along with my history. I speak broken English so the profusing gashes can remind us that our current state is not a mystery. I'm so tired of the negative images that are driving my people mad. So unless you've seen it rob a bank, stop calling my hair bad. I'm so sick of this nonsensical racial disparity. So don't call it good unless your hair is known for donating to charity as much as has been raped away from our people. How can you expect me to treat their imprint on your language as anything less than equal? Let there be no confusion. Let there be no hesitation. This is not a promotion of ignorance. This is a linguistic celebration. That's why I put trilingual on my last job application. I can help to diversify your consumer market is all I wanted them to know. When they call me for the interview, I'll be more than happy to show that I can say what's good, what's agwan, and of course, hello. Because I'm articulate. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Cesare Warren. I am an associate professor of urban education and teacher education at Michigan State University, founder and CEO of Identity Educational Solutions, LLC, and I am the author of Centering Possibility in Black Education. I was inspired to write this book in 2019 as I spent some time in Harlem, in New York City, in residence as part of an academic fellowship there. And I read a book called Freedom Dreams. And the book is written by Robin D.G. Kelley. And in that book, he chronicles what was in the minds of activists, intellectuals, entertainers, who would identify themselves as part of the Black radical tradition. Centering Possibility in Black Education is a book that is for young people, for elders, for caregivers, for advocates, and for educators alike, all people who are interested in improving the education condition of Black children. It is a book that is written in the tradition of Black education as a field that has been committed to both documenting all of the ways that schooling in the U.S. has been an exercise in the dehumanization of Black children and Black people, but also how we have struggled against that dehumanization, how we have fought and persisted to realize versions and forms of schooling that are indeed enriching and inviting for Black children and Black educators. And so this book picks up there, which sort of brings me to my second point, which is that possibility determines the stretch of our doing and being in the world as Black people, not our problems. And as we think about the significance of anti-Blackness as incredibly compelling for helping us to understand the ways that schools are sites of pain and suffering for Black people, it is more compelling to consider what we could do when we lead with possibility rather than leading with our problems. And so I see that as incredibly important. And I think also that Blackness is full of possibility, that we recast and re-understand Blackness as not a thing to be escaped or disdained, but that it is a thing full of wonder and opportunity, that and joy and healing. And so this book and this work is an invitation to turn into Blackness for joy and to reimagine nighttime as not something to be escaped while we wait for a morning to come for joy, but to really turn into the nighttime as its own project of joy. I wrote this book both during the pandemic, but also through a racial uprising as we came to understand the loss of George Floyd and his last words, "I can't breathe," and Breonna Taylor and all the folks who have lost their lives at the hands of police. We know what not being able to breathe is about. In this book, I wrote it with every image and every poem, every drawing and every story to be a breath of fresh air. Inhale, exhale as you read this book. I think it is a book that is going to encourage and motivate us to freedom dream. It's the substance of my freedom dream, and the teacher in me, my greatest desire is that whoever picks it up, that it will also inspire their freedom dreams.
Check, check.
Microphone check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, everyone. Oh, y'all lively at the end of the day. I love to see it. So first of all, welcome. I'm gonna say just up front that as a person who comes from Black communities all over the world, and particularly the Black church, my expectation is that this is going to be interactive and responsive and lively. Yep. And that when something moves you and when you feel so inclined, that you let us know. Yep. All right? So this is not a lecture. This is a turn up, because that's how we do things. And we're talking about the power of art and Blackness, and so it requires us to take up space, just even in the way that we challenge the ethos and energy of this space is a part of the conversation. You feel me? Mm-hmm. I'm also from Brooklyn, so it comes out. Yeah. So this is going to happen in 2 parts. The first part is going to be a conversation where we get to hear from the brilliant scholars and artists, Augustus and Dakota. And I'm just gonna field a few questions and try to open up this dialogue. The second part is going to be lively performances. This conversation is really thinking about the way that the power of Blackness moves through our lives, both in academia, in our work, in outside of academia, and how art helps to facilitate that work, and how art creates space for that work. So yeah, let's get into the tea. Y'all good?
Yep.
Let's do it.
All right,
Thank you.
so I have a couple of questions, and then it's possible, if we have time and flexibility, that folks might want to throw. I told you this is a dialogue, right? So y'all might have some questions that you want to pull out from the audience. I'll say my name is Dr. J, and I know I'll have Augustus and Dakota introduce themselves, but my name is Dr. J, and I am a professor of social justice education. I am a community educator, a scholar, an aspiring waymaker, and I'm about this life. I'm about transformation beyond a moment, and transformation that really, especially when it comes to the Black community, is near and dear to my heart, from experiential knowledge and also from the scholarship and activism that I'm engaged in. This conversation about the intersection of art and academia is also near and dear to me because when I was a young Black girl in the streets of Brooklyn, I became a part of a very powerful youth organization, Urban Word NYC, that centers art, right? And centers art in such powerful ways beyond the scope of the four walls of a classroom that it really made me think powerfully about the distinction between schooling and education. And so I came to academia to help, to keep pushing that work. And so the way that the arts creates possibilities is something that is near and dear to me. So to open up this conversation, my first question for you both is how art has emerged as a way of knowing and being across the everydayness of your lives, of your Black existence, and across your scholarship and research. I want to understand more about what it helps you to articulate that other modalities don't have the capacity for.
Hey, everybody. I mean, Dr. J set the stage, so hey, everybody. Yeah, you got to talk back. Thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon, for being here after, I'm sure, a long but productive and fruitful day. We appreciate the space that we get to share with you all. I'm Cesare Warren, but I'm not here as Cesare Warren. I'm here as Augustus this evening. Yes. As a singer, songwriter, artist, but I also happen in my day job to be an associate professor at Vanderbilt University, Peabody College. And I'll say, before I knew anything about being an academic or writing papers for publication, I was a boy who just enjoyed music, simply put. And I think if you're anything like me, you can hear the lyrics of a song and know where you were when you heard it. I mean, music in so many ways has been a soundtrack for so many incredible moments in my life. And if you're also like me, someone can say something and you immediately hear song lyrics. And if you spend enough time with me, you won't have a hard time hearing me just start singing song lyrics in a random conversation about whatever's happening. So that's always been who I am, and I think what academia has done to me, and for any of us who have pursued a PhD, and those who are pursuing a PhD, which I'm now going to admonish you that do not allow the academy to do this, is that it really worked to flatten me in a lot of ways. My life in pursuit of the PhD was never about a career in academia, as much as it was always about my commitment to families and kids, and Black kids in particular, because I was a teacher on the south side of Chicago. I taught middle school and high school math. And I had questions that drove me to graduate school. And then I started to get professionalized and realized that my whole life sort of orbited around the PhD, and that was by design. So then once you get the job, then now everything has to orbit around or be in community with your identity as an academic. And what art has done is rescued me from that sort of life. In many ways, because it helps to remind me that I am far more than my paper in a journal.
Yes.
And my worth is certainly not defined by My university affiliation. The institution is lucky to have me, and I'm clear about what my relationship is to the institution. And so art has just really been a lane, and I don't have to rehearse here what we've been going through in the last 2 years, but as we have all been sort of sunk into a place of deep mourning, of deep loss, it has been art that's been really important to sustaining me in this time. And the last thing I'll sort of say in response to that, if you follow my career, and I'll say, just a little over 10 years ago, I would come up to Madison to work on my dissertation. Very strange, but I could work here, I could focus. And then I would hang out with my friends at night who were graduate students. Dr. Charleston was here at the time and some other folks. And during that time, I was sort of thinking about empathy and white women teachers and working with black boys and really trying to make sense of that. And that's where I started my career. And then that man got elected in 2016. And I decided then that I could not spend any more of my time ruminating on white supremacy as the unit of analysis in my work. And I really had to turn into black brilliance and black beauty. And that always showed up in images and dancing, in music. And that's what I cloaked myself with as we were all sort of experiencing the racialized assault that was his presidency. And so that's art has always sort of been this mainstay, and I've decided to move it from the periphery and make it more central.
Yeah, my trajectory is somewhat similar. Again, my name is Dakota Irby. I've been doing art as long as I can remember, visual art. I was very heavy into theater and playwriting when I was in college. Even thought I applied to NYU for playwriting and theater. So also a musician. I've been in many bands. Back in the day, my name was Irby. My last name, the intellectual ruling black youth. That was a long rap name, but that was my name. So yeah, I've always just been into art. I was the kid that was in school beating on the cubicle desk, making a beat. Everybody's up like, hey, 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 hey. That was me that got sent to the principal's office. And so I think some of those early experiences really pushed me to disassociate kind of like a lot of my artistic expression with like traditional kind of schooling spaces. And that's honestly something that I carried with me really until 2020. I'm a self-taught guitarist. I taught myself how to play guitar when I was writing my dissertation. And so the two go hand in hand, but for many years I would go to work and people didn't really even know that I was a musician, despite the fact that like I had a full band and I would play like shows and festivals, and then I would go to work and I would be like, how was chapter 2, But in 2020, the pandemic, the silver lining of the pandemic was it gave me the gift of time. And that allowed me to get back into art. That combined with my daughter who, when she was in kindergarten, asked me why I didn't play my guitar anymore. She grew up in a place where, we played music all the time in our basement. So she heard music every Friday night when me and my buddies would jam. And one day we were sitting in the car eating breakfast and she said, why don't you play your guitar anymore? And I said, well, life, I'm busy, X, Y, Z. And she was like, how you gonna be a rock star if you don't practice? So I was like, that's a good question. That's a good question.
And a child shall lead.
Yes. So between that, her kind of pushing me to start back playing, and then when the pandemic hit, I really started just getting back into the discipline of like playing music. And I decided that I don't want to put it down anymore. And I also decided that I wanted to bring that part of me more intentionally into my academic life so I can feel more whole and less fragmented. So in terms of like the what it allows me to do that like writing in academia doesn't, to be expressive in a different way, to be imaginative, to make up stuff, And so I think the imaginative part is really exciting, something that I love to, write from different perspectives. So for example, I'll sing a song in part 2 that is a song that I wrote as my book writing to me to encourage me to actually write my book, Stuck Improving. And so just to be able to do creative things like that wouldn't quite make sense in an academic journal or, in a traditional kind of way that we think about the production of knowledge. This is really the production of knowledge through a particular kind of set of cultural mediums that's just different and offers different ways of expressing oneself. And so It allows me to do a lot more than what I can do in academia, and I'm very thankful and grateful to be here to be able to share that part of myself.
You know, this is in so many ways full circle. So I mentioned Urban Word NYC. And when I was a teenager in Urban Word NYC, not too long ago, what? No laughs. I don't know. Not too long ago. So when I was a teenager in that program, one of the things that really struck me or like didn't sit well with me was the reality that my peers would come to this out-of-school arts-based space for writing intensive and performance intensive workshops after school, right? And be so successful in that space that we were invited to perform on Broadway, at the Apollo Theater, in Madison Square Garden. My peers were coming to First Wave, right? Out of Urban Word NYC. And so many of them were being failed in school, in classrooms that were deeming them illiterate, while you on Broadway spitting fire. How is that even possible, right? And so what it showed me in that time in my life is that there is something that school is not capacious enough for when it comes to the intersection, especially of art and who we are from the Black community. And so I want to lean in a little bit more. I know, Dakota, you spoke to it a bit, but I want to lean in a little bit more on what art allows. Because oftentimes when we talk about integrating schools, we're talking about assimilation. We're talking about what it means for us to engage in acts of erasure and to translate ourselves into whiteness. And so what it means to create spaces that don't flatten who you are, what is it that art is making possible or capacious enough in your lives that we need so urgently in this moment?
What that immediately makes me think about is I remember being a young teacher and, you know, my principal would just be like, your students need to become critical thinkers. And part of the contradiction there was that she didn't want me to be a critical thinker because I couldn't question, I couldn't be imaginative, I couldn't draw outside the lines. Everything had a border, everything had a boundary. But yes, she wanted me to make critical thinkers. And really, what that translates to, and I don't want to, she's an agent of a broader institution that is much more committed to numbers than they are to people. And I think what that translated to was make sure your students are successful, which is make sure that they can be easily dominated. I mean, if we make it real simple, do what you're supposed to do so you can navigate this system that has already been designed for you to be, sort of occupy a particular place. And so what I think art has always done, and I read this book, Robin D.G. Kelley's Freedom Dreams. I mention it at this point as Bible to me. But part of what he argues in the Black Radical Imagination is that no social movement across time, especially a social movement that's committed to Black people's liberation, has been without art. Because what art does is that it gives us a language and a way of thinking and being in the world that we don't yet have words for. Yes. And so I have really had to sit with what is it meant for particular artists and works of art that I appreciate to narrate and open up an alternative to our present reality, and or what it means to be suffering through forms of terror, race, gender terror, and to be able to turn on a song and escape that terror. To think about fugitivity not as a physical fleeing, but also a psychic and emotional sort of transgression or escape from a moment of terror, which gives me some space to sort of survive and continue to persist in the institution that I recognize as assaultive. So I think art is a mode of transmission that gives us permission to be whatever it is we can imagine ourselves to be. And I find it curious, you know, and I ask my students this, why is it after kindergarten, perhaps maybe first grade, that we don't incentivize young people just to be imaginative, to make play, and to allow play to drive their engagement in school? School has become a mechanism of control. Perhaps it's always been a mechanism of control. And so art has always been the space, I think, of transgression. And imagination now, as I've come to understand it, is its own discipline. And so when you take away art, you take away the discipline of imagination. And I'm really sort of moved by how we can allow our work to bring art back and make it central focus as a way and as a discipline towards imagination and alternative futures.
Ooh. Thank you so much.
Now, come on now. Everything you said.
Out here preaching, right? Out here preaching. Come on.
I mean, I think that, you hit, most of the things that I would have said. I mean, I think the big part of it is imagination, right? Play, imagination. You never get too old to play, right? Hopefully people never get so serious with their careers that they don't play and imagine and have fun. And so it can be used in a lot of different ways. And this is something for me, I stand in front of the mirror with the lights on and dim the lights and put my sunglasses on and play guitar in the mirror. You know what I mean? I do that. It's a way for me to play, and it's a way for me to escape the seriousness, the responsibility. It's a way for me to be imaginative and have fun, and I do it with my children. And sometimes I do it alone by myself. So I think a lot of it is about joy. I mean, I also do, visual arts. I recently wrote and published a children's book called Magical Black Tears, and I worked on that with my children.
It's available for purchase.
It is. It's available for purchase. And since we developed the book, I'm now in the process of developing a children's museum exhibition. It focuses on the big idea that direct action and protest create a more racially just world. And it's fun because I'm like working with children and we wilding out.
Yes.
We making puppets, right? Yes. One of the puppets' name is Tearing Up Stuff. And it's really gonna be off the hook, right?
I love it.
So it's really an opportunity to just be imaginative and be fun and to laugh and to really just, use the big word is imagination. Right? It allows us to go beyond the current reality that we live in. It allows us to imagine past, think about the past, and also project new futures for ourselves.
Yeah.
Let me add something very quickly to that. Your comments got me thinking about how art also gives us permission to be just as emotional as we want to be. Mm-hmm. One thing that I have come to understand about the consequence of whiteness is that it strips us of our permission to be emotional, and or intellectualizes it. It creates caricatures. And art, I think, if I want to be happy, if I want to be sad, we can just be all of the emotions and allow the art to transport us in all the ways that we need to be transported. And I think that's so important. Especially as a black man who's been socialized, obviously, to be tough, right, and to be emotionless and to deal. It's okay to lean into the space of whatever that emotion is and give myself that permission.
That's actually a good segue into my next question. So I'm hearing a lot of language around what it means to have art as a way to transport, to transgress, to escape, right? The notion of fugitivity. And so my question is about the tensions and possibilities that you're still wading through as you contend with the ethos of the academy, because we are here, and the ethos of Black culture, Black art, and Black life. Like, what is it that you are wading through as you navigate these tensions that require refuge and escape? And then, as another dimension of that, what does it cost you? And or what is it freeing you from?
Yeah, so I would say that, the seriousness, right? A particular, performance, right? A particular way of having to perform is what it allows me to dismantle, to challenge, to push up against. And I think that I think that my experience has been that the word that comes to mind is like fragmented, I felt fragmented, and I feel fragmented when I'm not deeply committing myself to engaging in different kinds of mediums of art. And so, like I was saying before, I used to keep this part of myself over here, and then I keep another part of myself over here, and another part of myself over here, and people wouldn't know this part of me. I remember one time I was playing with a bunch of my buddies in a band. We had been jamming for maybe 2 years, and one of them came to practice and was like, "Bro, you got a book?" And I just never, I was just this band guy. And then people would be at work and be like, "You play guitar?" Yeah, right? And I realized that the cost of fragmenting myself was just like, not insanity, but it was just very unhealthy because I was a different person everywhere that I went. And I had to perform differently everywhere that I went, even in the art spaces.
Yeah, why? I want to hear more about that. Why did you not bring your academic self into the art spaces?
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't bring my academic self to the art spaces. I didn't bring my art self into the academic spaces and vice versa. And I think a lot of it was just this, it's this way of capitalism and white supremacy like fragments, right? There's a weekend, there's the week, right? Like that's made up so capitalism can thrive. You know what I'm saying? There's a first, a second, and a third shift. There's all of these different ways that, this society fragments our lives. And I was really just kind of doing that because I thought that, I guess some of it might have been just this fear of not being accepted, right? If I'm with my homies that I'm not trying to really, for the purpose of trying to be accepted, I'm not trying to talk about an academic book that I wrote or something in a journal, right? That didn't feel like what I was supposed to do with that group of people. But what I found is that by being open and opening up, it allows people to discover different dimensions of myself, but it also allows me to discover different dimensions of other people. So even, for example, when me and Cesare started, I don't even know how we started talking about art and music and everything. It just opened up a whole different level of relationship that we have with one another. So he'll come over to my house and we'll listen to music and but we can also talk about books and stuff too, right? So it just opened up a much richer, deeper kind of relationship that really I wasn't giving myself permission to have access to that relationship because I was withholding and thinking that Cesare needed me to be the academic colleague.
Wow. It's just heavy on my heart to think about how, in terms of the cost, like it could have cost you deeper access to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Like our relationships, yeah.
Yeah, ditto. I think it's enhanced our relationship. I mean, I was a fan of his work before I knew he was an artist, and I think it just has given me so much more respect for him and who he is. But I think also what is done, the fear, to your question about the fear, I think it's like fear of being illegible or being read as not credible. You can't be a serious scholar if you out here singing or doing music. When are you writing your papers? How are you going to advance your career in an R1? Because, of course, if you're not at an R1, who are you? It's just so many of these logics about academic life that we're socialized into, and before we know it, we look up and we like, how did I get here? And we call it putting our head down and grinding. But we have had to give up so much. And I think about this even with young people. In my first book, when I talked about them, when I asked them, what got you to college versus your classmates, they would say to me, there would be a visible discomfort with having to exceptionalize themselves from the people that they grew up with and the communities that they rep hard, right? I'm from Inglewood. I'm not going to say, right? They love where they were from, but they also recognized that there was some dissonance, that I'm also college educated, and I had to leave where I was from, and I had to give that up, and they feel it in their bodies. And I think any person of color who has sort of had to move through schools, there are costs hidden, seen and unseen, and we have to then reckon with those costs later in life. And so part of my advice always to young scholars or people who want to pursue is always to find the things that center you, bring you joy, and do not give those things up. Because who you are is why you matter in the space. If you're somebody else, the space is not going to be what it needs to be with you in it. And I think the other piece to this in terms of like the costs and the tensions is also making our work legible across platforms. And Gloria Lasson Billings, years ago, I said, I've always read her work to be so accessible. And she said, if my mother can't read it, I don't want to write it. And it's been really important to me that I continue to find ways to be in conversation with people that are not academics. This last book I wrote was not for academics at all. But it has gotten so much traction from practitioners. And that's important. We have to translate the work and make it accessible to multiple groups of people. The last thing I'll say to this that I'm living in too is the space between the theoretical and the pragmatic. There are people suffering, and then there are some of us who are like, well, we can't deal with the pragmatic because we have to be figuring out and theorizing the phenomena. And I'm like, yeah, we do gotta do some theory, but we also got to deal with the fact that people are suffering in real time. So that's a real space that I don't have an answer for that, but it's a real tension. And I think art becomes a little bit of a way to talk across audiences because art is legible to multiple audiences.
Yeah, and to acknowledge the way that art and knowledge is being produced very powerfully in spaces beyond the academy. Like we can access that differently when we broaden our conceptions of what kind of knowledge we value, right? So we're gonna actually transition into our performances, and I wanna just first of all thank you all for your brilliance and authenticity in what you've shared so far. And I know that there's another level of that that's gonna come out when you perform. So we're gonna transition now. It's not an intermission, but we're gonna just create an opportunity for you all to just get the stage ready. We might be able to take one or two questions. So if y'all got y'all hand mics, so we're gonna step down. So we have like one or two questions from the audience while we transition. Yeah, all right, I got you. We're gonna hang out with y'all down here for now. Okay, right here? Okay, I got you. Yeah, let's see. Oh, you got a mic back there? Does that work? Okay, cool.
Hello. Try to bear with me. I have a few thoughts about art. I've been a teacher for a number of years, and I worked in Compton for a number of years. And I'm thinking of what you're saying about art and music, lit, the whole broad spectrum of art. And I keep on going back to when I was 12 years old, growing up in a farming community in Wisconsin. And I think I met some of the most authentic black characters by watching Roots. And I think when you talk about black history, I think what made that program so powerful, not only for black people, but for white people, was the music. One of the things was the music. I think if you show that program without the music, it's different. And the humor. I think it's really hard to talk about slavery and stuff without, especially if you talk about with teenagers and stuff, without them seeing a survival element. And I think humor obviously is art. And I think if you take some of the humor even out of that, if you take somebody like Chicken George out of that program, it is not the same. It's not the same thing. So when you talk about art and you talk about history, I think there's certain ways that you can expose things to students that make it a little bit more palatable for a certain age group. You know what I'm saying? But my second thing is, I agree with what you're saying, and I'm going to tell you that one of the things when a district is poor, that one of the things they start to take out of it is art. And it's sad because it really is a way in for some kids, and it becomes reading and math, reading and math, reading and math. But having said that, it seems like there's always this dual thing of like, we want kids to say anything and express themselves, and then we accept anything, and then you say, but that's not, how do you want to say it? I just don't feel like sometimes we're guiding them in the way that they need to be guided, even in art. A friend of mine, I think, said it best. You have to really know the rules of something, like Toni Morrison knows the rules of grammar in order to break them. And I think that's the same with art. Like, we have to guide kids and know that it's an expression, but sometimes I say we do this and then we celebrate, and we're not getting sometimes the same art out of kids. Do you know what I'm saying? Has that been your observation at all? It seems like if you I'm not trying to put kids down in their, maybe it's an education thing that teachers we have to be better at guiding them in it, or it just seems like because it's an expressive thing that we don't sometimes want to tell them what some of the rules are, and then we kind of get this, oh, that's great, but it's not, it's not making it up to the roots level.
Yeah, I mean, part of what I'm hearing is teachers teach how they were taught, and many of us have a schema for what is a good student, and mostly that does not include us drawing outside the line in any particular way. And art is an invitation to actually do just that, right? To move in and out of boundaries and to create new boundaries. And if I'm a person who wants control and who wants to exert power and authority, that is always going to undo me and make me uncomfortable. And that's exactly what art is supposed to do. But we don't incentivize that, I think, with young people. So, yeah, there's a lot of overlaps there.
Dakota, did you want to add anything?
No, not really.
Let's.
I would just say that I value, there's multiple different ways of thinking about, and approaching art. So I think I would challenge the idea that you have to know the rules before you can engage and create things that are beautiful and meaningful. You can do it without the rules. I just started taking guitar lessons a year ago. It's great to learn theory. The first several people that I started taking lessons with was just like, don't take any lessons. Do what you're doing, right? So I would just challenge the idea that, people need to have a particular kind of rules. That's one approach, but people create beauty in art through their artistic expression from all different vantage points. Yes. Some are formal and some are people are informally trained, and some people are just being imaginative and creative and creating beauty and meaning in the world. So that's the only thing that I would add. But thank you for your comment, though. Yes.
Thank you so much for this brilliant conversation. Can we give some love right here for Dakota and Augustus? Like real love? Because we have the art and just the intellects that are intersecting in such powerful ways. So I'm going to transition us into Act 2, where you are going to have the opportunity to experience the way that art and Blackness and everything that has been brilliantly articulated on this stage actually manifests itself in the lives of these two artists. Let's give them another round of applause. Lots of love, lots of noise. Let's do this.
And can we give a round of applause to Dr. J for being such a brilliant... All right. How y'all doing? You still with me? All right. We're going to jump right in. I'm Augustus. I think you know that already. Can you snap with me? There you go. You can feel it too. It's okay. I got a story to tell about a people on a journey somewhere. So many ups and downs, twists and turns. But we're here standing, so many lessons learned. It's a love letter to them, that boy, that girl, from the creator of the entire world. You matter. You've been made perfect in God's eyes. I want you to know God don't make mistakes. The hue of your skin is bigger than race. We come in all shades, infinite variety, yeah. Refuse to be slave to narrow imagining, yeah. It's a love letter to them, that boy, that girl, from the creator of the entire world. You matter. You've been made perfect in God's eyes. Whoa, you matter. You've been made perfect in God's eyes. Whoa, you matter. You've been made perfect in God's eyes. See, there's something special about love one can't forget. It transcends our differences and it knows no regret. Love drives out fear. It's the source of peace. It rights our wrong and long suffering. But when darkness comes, remember these words, that God is love. Nothing better in this world. You matter. You've been made perfect. Do you know you matter? Okay, as long as you know. Oh, you matter. You've been made perfect in God's eye. I'm here to tell you, you matter. You've been made perfect in God's eye. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Okay. I feel like, oh, that's kind. And you can hear me good? Okay. All right. If I can get myself, okay, this is good. I'm Augustus. Again, you know that. But I continue to introduce myself even as my own affirmation for the space that I'm standing in. I've had a lot of names and a lot of positions over time, but this is a new and very special one, and I'm so appreciative to the office that brought us here and to Dr. Charleston and all of you for spending a little time. And with that, we're going to keep going. Feel free to move and have some fun with me. That was a song off my debut EP. It's coming soon. I can't tell you when yet, but it's coming. Y'all know this one? Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. And brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Father, Father, there's no need to escalate, oh no. War is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know we got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Oh, pick in line and pick a sign. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on. What's going on? What's going on? Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah. Whoa, mother, why they seem to think we're wrong? But who are they to judge us? Just because our hair is long. You No, we got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Picket line and picket sign. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?
Right on. Right on.
Yeah. What's going on? It's amazing that a song like that is still extremely relevant. And we're always looking around asking ourselves, what's going on? Y'all, we've lived through a lot in the last few years. A lot of loss and a lot of mourning. And as we watched the protests in 2020 after the senseless murder of George Floyd, I found myself in a space of mourning already, but just deeper mourning, that this democracy has still not met its ideal. But what I also found myself doing is being annoyed with the fact that these people lose their lives and we simply know them as a hashtag. They lived full lives. They were sons, they were daughters, they were friends, they were companions, they were students, right? They were all of these things. They were full people, and we reduced them to a hashtag. And so I wrote a song, and this is a song for them.
We speak your name, we see your face, we hear your voice, a life not in vain. We speak your name, we see your face, we hear your voice, a life not in vain.
When will justice come for him? How was he to know his life would end? A father, brother, a son, a friend. How will his family breathe again? In a park or on a corner, pulled to the side of a lonely road. Hands up, please don't shoot. He has dreams, still he dies. And yet we're told
He was a gun, but no good.
and we're shown.
Life deserved less press than
Now we're so are not human. Now we're torn. No life is perfect, but they are worth it. I sing this song for them. Too often we forget black women. Just saying her name is not enough. Brutality has no limit. Black queer lives matter just as much. Oh, story after story. We're bound to rebel.
I know that's for sure.
My patience wearing thin, but I wonder what's the cure. Tell the truth about that man that he lived.
and his friends, and she gave all that she had, and they prayed. Tell the truth about that man, that he lived, and his friends, and she gave. Yes, she did, and they prayed. No life is perfect, but they are worth it. I sing this song for them. Rihanna, Nina, Tatiana, Sandra, Corinne, and Keisha, Ayana, oh, and Tanisha, Charlene, Michelle, Pamela, and Cynthia, Maya and Philando. We miss you, Stefan, Samir and Michael, and Trayvon, George Floyd, Eric Garner. We can't breathe, and we'll never forget you. The names go on and on, and on and on and on and on and on and on. The names go 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 on and on and on. Oh, Black Lives Matter. We see your face. We speak your name. We hear your voice. Your life was not in vain. We speak your name. We see your face. We hear your voice. A life not in vain. I was born by the river in a little tent. And oh, just like a river I've been running ever since. It's been a long, long time. A long time coming. But I know a change has gotta come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there in that starry, 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 starry sky. It's been a long, long, long time. A long time coming, but I know a change has gotta come. Oh, yes, it will. But being woke don't always feel so good. Black people dying everywhere I look. I want out of this reality. Can I go back to sleep and dream of lands in an unknown place? Afrofuturistic galaxy, black joy is in that space. Melanated humanity, but I am here and this don't feel so great. Black suffering in these United States. My blackness ain't a burden, no matter what they say. Morning. I am okay, I'll be all right. Possibilities born at night. Morning. It'll be all right, it's in the morning. It's in the morning. I wrote that last song, Mourning. For a lot of us, we have seen much more morning than we have seen mornings. And it is inescapable for those of us of African ancestry. And for a lot of us, we've known a lot of loss. And I just decided, while I can't escape it, I can understand it as possibility, as a pathway somewhere greater than what we presently have. And so even as we remember the names, too many names to name, we know we gotta be woke to do the work. So we need to wake up. Thank y'all so much for being such an attentive audience. Yeah. Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty, yeah. Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. They're the ones who's coming up. The world is in their hands. When you teach the children to STEM the very best you can. The world don't get no better if we just let it be. The world don't get no better. We gotta change it, y'all, you and me. Got some change makers in the room? Wake up all the doctors, time to make sick people well. They're the ones who's suffering and who catch all the hell. They're the ones who's coming up. The world is in their hands. When we teach the children to STEM the very best you can. Oh, wake up all the builders, time to build a new land. Maybe then we'll listen, and I just forgot the words. But that's alright, cause we still here, and we gonna do our thing. Next time I will be prepared, better than right now, yeah. The world don't get no better if we just let it be. The world don't get no better. We gotta change it, y'all, you and me. Yeah, you and me. We gon' change the world. We gon' change the world. We will change the world. You and me. You and me, you and me. You and me. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. You can follow me on the socials at Chezare, Chezare, Augustus. And I'm very happy to introduce my boy, my homie, my co-conspirator, Dakota Black.
My name is Dakota Irby. I'm gonna sing a few original songs for you. I'm a songwriter and reluctant singer. But somebody gotta sing the songs. So here it goes, this first one is about the power of love. I learned the hard way. Man-made shelters can't protect me. So I formed an army of black soldiers to surround me. Then I learned the hard way that my soldier friends, when times get hard, they desert me. Then I, thank God, I happened to fall in love with this woman. She fortified me. My fort is built with love. My fort is built with love. My fort is built with love, 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 love. My fort is built with love. La da da, la da 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 da. La da 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 da. La da da, la da 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 da. La da da, la da da. Built with love. My fort is 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 built with, guess what, y'all? Love.
I shared my dreams. No one believed me. So I wrote them in color. For all eyes to see. Then I watch the people rip. I stood and I watched people rip my pages away. Then I shared my life stories. Still, no one believed me. So I sketched them in the sand. Yes, I did. On the shore of a Madison beach. And I watch the waves. I stood on the shore and I watched the waves wash my dreams away. You gon' believe me. You gon' pay attention to my dreams. You gon' believe me. You gon' pay attention. Thank you. This next song, my book wrote this to me. It's called Permission. I give you permission to love me every day. I give you my very best submission. Now take me all the way. It's true, I'm just in draft, so rework me slowly, fix me slowly, slowly. Fix me slowly. Fix me slowly. All I can say now is that I'm so thankful for all of the love you gave. All I can say now is that I'm so thankful for all of the love. I want to thank you for the time you gave to me. All I can say now, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful love gave to me. All I can say now is that I'm so thankful for all of the love you gave to me.
Thank y'all.
There are times when it's hard to believe you might be living life on your knees, and in your mind, in your circles, seeds get planted that rework you out of your space, out of your shine, out of your vision, till you feel blind. Deep down, when you're in that place where you feel lost, there is a way. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I say yes. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I say yes. See, there are times when when it's hard to believe you might be living life on your knees, in your mind and in your circles. Seeds get planted that rework you out of your space, out of your shine, out of your vision, till you feel blind. Deep down, when you're in that place, remember these words: there is a way. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I say yes. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I say yes. 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 I say yes. I say yes. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I say yes. All right, now, I'm gonna need a little bit of participation. I'm gonna name some things. If it's something you want, you need it, you dream of, I want you to say yes. Come on up and help me out, bro. It's gonna go like this. I'll say, car, yes. New house, yes. Joy, yes. Happiness, yes. Fewer emails, yes. Some new colleagues, yes. Happiness, yes. Peace of mind, yes. All right. Find a neighbor, the person next to you. I want you to lock eyes with somebody and I want you to sing to that person. They need this affirmation in here this afternoon, y'all, okay? Right? Sing to this person. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I say yes. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I say yes. Louder. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I say yes. Yeah. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I say yes. All right. Thank y'all. All right, one more round. I want you to sing to yourself. Whatever I want, whatever I need, whatever I dream of, I say yes. Whatever I want, whatever I need, whatever I dream of, I say yes. Like you mean it. Whatever I want, whatever I need, whatever I dream of, I say yes. Whatever I want, whatever I need, whatever I dream of, I say yes. Thank y'all so much. Hey. Whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you dream of, I pray that it comes to pass for you. Thank y'all.
We would love to meet you outside. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Here. We know we've got several people left in the room and lots of folks online. What a powerful way to end, to close out a successful 2 days of Diversity Forum 2022. Arts and academia, and activism. Art gives us a language, a way of thinking, of being, of knowing, communicating the things that we don't necessarily have the words for. It speaks in languages across difference in ways that are powerful and communicative. It provides an escape and gives us permission, as we just learned, to be whatever it is we need to be for that moment, for that time, for ourselves, for our community, for our souls. It's that space to be emotional. So powerful. Let's give another round of applause to our scholar artists, arts and academia. As the 2022 UW-Madison Diversity Forum comes to a close, I hope you are as encouraged as I am and excited about what we've learned and discussed in preparation to champion social justice, racial justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging as we embrace the power of remembering and reclaiming our legacies to imagine new futures. We took in a lot these last couple of days, and if you did it right, you're tired, because I'm tired, right? But we learned that building legacies has to begin with remembering. We learned that art and art making carries legacies and exists to inspire new and brighter futures. We learned to disrupt ableism, and that will affect change, positive change. We carry these histories with us as it affects how we interact with our community and pushes us to think differently, to think in ways that benefit individuals beyond ourselves. We learned from Dr. Miles, our keynotes, that things and how things created and left behind gives us insight into how ordinary histories become informative, are meaningful, and draws connections between people and places where these things thrived, right? And connects us to the past and to the present. We learned that data could provide us a pulse, an understanding of the experiences of students, of faculty, of staff, of our community members, in ways in which they experience the place, and lets us know places where there are further areas of opportunity. Also lets us know our pockets of excellence, right? And what we can learn and grow from in spaces that are doing it right. We learn how to engage with difficult histories that challenge us in numerous ways. And we learned effective ways and tools to combat racism through equity rounds and micro-learning labs and professional development, and continuing the conversation to foster a collective understanding in ways in which we can and need to grow as it relates to equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. We learned that mentoring practices provides us understanding what we need to do to move the agenda forward as it relates to students, right? And to understand culturally appropriate strategies that address students' unique needs across differences, depending on their positionality, right? So all of these topics, right, we were here to ensure that we are learning and growing and to achieve the greatest benefit from our community here, from being in fellowship and learning and growing from one another. And we must have the tools and knowledge of what methods those before us used that were successful, to build upon those, and how former champions for change achieve their diversity-related goals and have progressed us more toward equitable and inclusive working and learning environments. And so the Diversity Forum encouraged us to apply what we've learned. Again, I'll say before, what is learned here should leave here. And enables us to continue to take a deeper look into the histories that have shaped us. I believe the experiences we've had these last 2 days will positively inform our efforts, our strategic approach, and have provided us tools to effectively execute organizational and inclusive excellence. I mentioned at the start of the day that I truly believe in the power of change and all the possibilities that goes along with it, but change requires persistence. So we get tired, yes we do, but we must persist because a river cuts through rock not because of its power, but because of its persistence. And if we want to make change in a big way, sometimes we need to be reflective and understand that sometimes we need to make big changes. We need to utilize each other as resources, our communities to help us and hold each other accountable, because even the sharpest blade cannot cut its own handle. So, I believe that all the information, the discussions, the exhibitions, the public history project, hopefully you all have had an opportunity to see that we participated in, is guiding, it's a guiding light for the work of change that's to come. This is the end of the forum, but just the beginning of the next chapter of our collective journey. I talked about our journey at the onset of the first day. So thank you to everyone who participated, who led a panel, who engaged with your colleagues, your community, who participated and attended. And remember, you can view and revisit and share both days of the 2022 Diversity Forum, the speakers and the sessions online for the next 6 months. So make sure you log in, and the things that struck your chord, make sure you share that with your colleagues and your partners. I want to give a special shout out to my team. I mean, Christina, Nick, Corey, Crystal, Justin, Deanna, Una, the media team here has done a great job here. Laura, all the volunteers from the DDEA for their work on making sure this year's forum was a success, as well as the Campus Diversity and Climate Committee, who helped to put this thing together in the planning phases and to ensure that this ran smoothly. Didn't it run smoothly for you all? It was huge. I know we have less people here now, but we had, I don't know, a couple thousand people between online and in person. So thank you again for joining us in the Diversity Forum. I'm from Detroit, so I always like to bring a gem with me from Detroit, and usually I like to quote a particular artist. In this juncture, I think it's appropriate that I quote an innovator from Detroit by the name of Henry Ford. He once said that if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. So thank you for joining us for Diversity Forum 2022 and On Wisconsin. Oh, I just want to mention again, our artists have a table out here right on the left, and so there's merchandise. So make sure you frequent that table and get what you need to feed your soul. All right.